Good evening. I'm Ida Maybon, and this is Astrology in the News for August 2nd, 2022. The big story today, Nancy Pelosi lands in Taiwan. Last Monday, there was seemingly a threat coming out of the Chinese government that said that if she landed in Taiwan, the plane might be shot down by the Chinese government. Well, this ended up being a tweet that was tweeted out by a former editor of the Global Times, and later that tweet was taken down. But the Chinese government did respond by saying, although it would not shoot down the plane, the military would not idly stand by if she attempted to land. So after about a week of Miss Pelosi keeping this kind of a secret, whether she was going to land or not, and the tensions began to rise, she ended up landing this morning. Now, she made some statement that said that she was reaffirming the commitment to our allies and to the free democratic nation of Taiwan, and that the U.S. was supporting this. But then the Chinese said, well, you've seriously undermined U.S.-Chinese relations by doing this. So the tensions are quite high. I want to see, how do we see this in the astrology chart for the current moment, and take a look at that. Now, I've actually removed all of the planets in this chart except for Mercury, the Sun, and Saturn. And I'll tell you why I've done that is because I really think that this particular event is really being reflected by the planets, having to do mostly with Mercury and the Sun going through their synodic relationship or their synodic cycle. Let me explain what that means. So now, if you go back about a month, so on this chart, we've got July the 2nd, this year, and you can see that Mercury is at 25 degrees Gemini, the Sun is at 10, almost 11 degrees Cancer. So this is about 15 degrees apart between these two planets. Well, this is basically the sunrise moment. So if you were to watch the sunrise and there wasn't anything blocking the horizon, you could see the actual line of the earth and then the sky rising above that. At this time, you'd see some light coming from the sun about to rise, but you would also see a little bit of Mercury's light. But as the light floods the sky more and more, now Mercury all of a sudden disappears in the light. And that's because Mercury is simply too close to the sun. The sun overpowers the light that Mercury shines off as a star. To the ancients, they saw this as a metaphorical or symbolic thing that was saying Mercury is dying. And Mercury goes through this death period. Now, Mercury in this position is the morning star. And Mercury transitions between being a masculine form and a feminine form. He, she was interchangeable. So when Mercury rises before the sun, and the whole time that he is basically behind the sun in zodiacal order, Mercury is in the masculine form. When you go forward from now, if we just go day by day, you can watch Mercury get closer and closer to the sun. Eventually, Mercury gets to be on the same exact degree of the sun, and then passes the sun. Now, if we go all the way until today, you can see now that Mercury has moved ahead further than 15 degrees from where the sun is. And that means that, again, you can see Mercury in the sky. So Mercury emerges from out of the beams of the sun once more. But now this is cool. Mercury is no longer seen in the morning. Mercury, now we have to go ahead by hours to go over to the sunset time. So we'll take the sun all the way across the sky of the day. And there it is. Let me draw the circle. So now you can see the descendant and the sun here. Now, if you were to go out and look at the sunset, and you had that clear horizon line with nothing blocking it, you would see the sun set and go down below, and then you would be able to just barely start to see the light of Mercury. So this whole cycle was a metaphorical death and rebirth, and Mercury goes from being the masculine form as the morning star, and then goes through the death and then rebirth, and then emerges as the evening star in her feminine form. So what does all of this have to do with Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan? Okay, that's what we're getting to. Let me just bring this back a little bit, just because for some reason I don't like it over there. Okay, so I don't know why I don't like it over there. But anyway, I'm going to get rid of this. All right. So what happened in this story in the sky as it was written by the gods and goddesses is that Mercury moves out from under the beams, becomes the feminine form of itself in the sign of Leo. Well, there's the symbolism right there, in my opinion. We've got Mercury as a feminine form in the sign of Leo. So all of those things put together, you're going to have a Mercury that could mean messengers or travel. Those are significations for Mercury. But now you've got a feminine messenger or females traveling. And what kind of females? Well, they're somehow Leo kinds of females. If you think about who Nancy Pelosi is as the House Speaker, yes, but for the continuity of government, she is third in line. That means if Joe Biden kicks the bucket and the VP is, she's not available, then next in line to be the supreme leader of the biggest nation on earth. I mean, this is like very representative of a queen, of a powerful authoritarian woman, or not authoritarian, but authoritative woman, a woman that carries the royal crown of the land, which she does in a sense. Now, the story plot gets thicker because she doesn't just emerge in the sign of Leo and become, normally like we would think maybe there's going to be something that a prominent person in the government or a queen or a movie star comes out and says something or does something or goes somewhere and somehow we find out about it, which we did in this case. But immediately this situation is walking into this opposition with Saturn. Saturn is that threat from China, the opposition, that tension. And so that's really the way that I see this story being reflected from the sky transits. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just plug in the rest of the planets because there's a little bit more to it. We'll put in the rest of these planets here. Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. All right, that should be everybody. Okay, so what else do we have? Well, we also still have in the sky, we have a pretty, still pretty close conjunction between Mars and Uranus. You can see now Mars is to the left of Uranus, which means that they have perfected and now they're beginning to separate just a little bit, but they're still very, very close. And we still also have Venus making a sextile back to this Mars-Uranus pair in Taurus. Why is this important? Well, because in ancient astrology, Venus is the ruler or the temple goddess of her domicile, which is Taurus and also Libra. But in this case, she has two guests. So she's taking care of her guests. She's providing Venusian things, but specifically Venusian Cancer-like things back to Mars Uranus. Now, I actually had a really hard time delineating this aspect in my monthly astrology for August horoscope because it's like you get this radicalized energy represented by Mars and Uranus together, right? But somehow there's this harmonious support or this nurturing coming from Venus. So it's like it was like this nurturing soft energy kind of going, go ahead, you can be radical and crazy, Mars. So I was like, how does this combination pair up? Well, now it makes perfect sense to me because there was this whole thing with when Pelosi said, well, I might go. And then, there was the immediate backlash from the Chinese government saying, you better not. And then what happened was this, like, even though the threat of striking down the plane it didn't turn out to be from the Chinese government, it was interesting that brought that threat into the conversation. And a lot of people in America were saying she really has to go now because we can't let, this threat come towards us without standing up for ourselves and being who we are as Americans. And as Americans, we don't want to be put into that position where China is now telling us where we can go and where we don't want to go. So this was sort of the logic that a lot of people in America were getting at. And they were saying, well, I don't know if you're going to get shot down or not, but you said you were going to do it, and you have to do it now because we can't let China take this stance and we can't back down from this. So that is where I see this nurturing support coming from the homeland, sort of a signification of Cancer, right? So it's kind of like this bringing together of, or like encouragement of this radical move that she makes. So that's tying in that aspect. Now, she didn't actually get shot down, and as of today, there doesn't seem to be any bad things that have come out of this. Now, the Chinese government is still threatening that this action will not go, unpunished, as it were, but I think that the last part of this puzzle is just you're going to see this perfection that is taking place right now between Jupiter and the Sun by trine. So there did seem to be, you have a very strong Jupiter. Jupiter can represent the law or the government or the authority of law in a sign of Aries that has military might and prowess behind it, and there's support going back to the Sun. So it seems like maybe that was mitigating the chances for something to really go sideways, at least in the particular moment that she landed. So this is how I see the astrology reflecting the events that describe Nancy going to Taiwan. And we're going to have to see in the future how this plays out, of course, but that's what I've got for this particular read on the astrology in the news for August 2nd, 2022. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I hope this was interesting. Please leave your comments in the section below. If you have any other interpretations, I would love to hear about it. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye.